So, hi guys. Today we have a small discussion on the Rust language, and we are amateur Rustaceans, as they say. We work with the Rust language to create software, and that's a lot of reasons why we do it. One of the main reasons is community, and today we'll be discussing about the Rust community and our experiences with Rust, the programming language. Yeah, so we'll start by introducing our panelists here. So today we have with us Vibhuti. Can you introduce yourself, Vibhuti? Vibhuti seems like you're not audible.
All right, sorry, is it now better?
Yeah.
Sorry, my microphone was turned off. So, hi. So, myself is Vibhuti. I do work with various multimedia related things, mostly with the video lens projects and also a zip organization project. So, in that, I do some Rust related things like one of our project is there called Ravi, which is an Rust AV1 encoder. So, I am one of the collaborator and developer for the encoder. So in that we do have a lot of things like we had to do from the scratch for build system, making the architecture support for various including Art64 and test suite like that. So I have been engaged with AV1 related stuff in Rust, and also we have other projects called Rust AV, which is called Rust Audio Video. So we have a lot of wrappers for like with the FFmpeg or VLC or some audio video codec support written in the Rust. So I do maintain some of them. So I think that's pretty much intro of me related to Rust. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Now, moving on to, let's move to Akshay. So Akshay is also one of our panelists today. It's great to know that one of the organizers of MiniDebConf themselves is like such a great part of Rust. So says
So,
how large the Rust community is.
yeah,
Akshay, can you introduce yourself?
yeah, during Mozilla, I mean, I used to volunteer for Mozilla in the past, and that's when I first heard about REST. And then back then I didn't know C++, any of it. And so I was like, why learn all of those old languages? Why not learn REST? And then I'm still a learner in REST. I'm trying to learn more of REST as and when required.
Awesome. Another part of our panel is Swarnim Arun, who also goes by the name of Minros. Swarnim, can you introduce yourself?
So I currently work as like a contributor in multiple open source projects. Some of them do include Rust, and I have mostly been part of Rust community as a person who has interest in Rust and has been working with C++ for over half a decade. So that's where I started with Rust, because C++ has been having a pretty weak support for aggressive or strong type systems like that are available in Haskell and like functional programming languages, which are quite essential to good programming and good programming patterns that I find useful. So that's how I got introduced to Rust, and now I just contribute to some projects here and there. My work with Rust is limited to currently open source. That's about it.
Yeah, the same goes with me. I'm also like an amateur developer, and I'm like doing a lot of open source contributions nowadays, especially on my own repositories, because I'm a bit scared of like going on to other repositories and putting up VIs. But otherwise, Rust has been really a very cooperative kind of community where people are exchanging a lot of ideas, gaining a lot of knowledge, and probably one of the greatest parts of Rust community is the streamers who are like streaming their Rust exploits on a regular basis. And I would really have to like name a lot of people. So I just say rather just go on to Twitch or YouTube or any other platform to find out about all of these people. Like an example would be John Gnengsak, and another would be Ryan Levick, Yeah, so just find out more about these people. They are really like, they are going into the core of systems programming, uh, distributed and other fields of computing, and that's a lot of thinking that goes into it, and that's how I came into the Rust community. The main reason would probably because I was a Pythonista, that is a Python developer, and this as the academic outreach that's going on within the Rust community also is a substantial part of why I am part of the Rust community. Yeah, that be my introduction of myself. Yeah. So let's get started with a small description of what the Rust language is, and so anyone wants to like describe their thought of what Rust is? I think Swarnim can do that, right?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to give a perspective of Rust from the side of someone who has worked with both web projects such as JavaScript and TypeScript and low level projects. I've not worked in a lot of the gray area of software programming, like the DevOps and side. So I'm not sure if I can have a perspective, but here's a general idea of what Rust represents to me, at least. Rust is at core a systems programming language that allows you flexibility of any of the more popular low-level or systems programming languages such as C, C++, or any other system programming language that you can think of, and while maintaining a type system that is expressive enough to represent some of the critical patterns that are required in modern programming uh, architectures, such as you have some types, or they are called enums. They are match patterns or pattern matching. And then there is different things such as traits over inheritance, and it is a form of you can think of it like object oriented programming, but better, in the form that you have a description of what something is, rather than inheritance based approach of having sub and super classes. So those are some of the key things that I find important with Rust in general, other than its de facto standard of having a borrow checker, verify your code in a memory safe, it's sort of memory safe, and completely, and something that is called fearless concurrency inside of Rust, that makes sure that the type system can verify that your code will always be uh, free from some of the common issues that one might face during, say, writing async and concurrency based programs. So that's extremely helpful, coming from something, say, JavaScript, where you can go into various edge cases while writing async code. So that's my perspective for us of how it improves the life of someone who's working with it or working with
Yes.
different languages.
So my description would be the same, would be similar. I have really loved the expressivity of the programming language as such, how expressive you can write your software, and all of the features that meshes very well together. Probably some of the best testing tools built into the language, the package manager, all of those contribute very well to the entire ecosystem. And then there's the community, for of course. Yeah, that's something that we have to always like talk about. Then I think Vibhuti might have a very good, better probably than mine, an introduction to the language. Vibhuti.
Hi. Sorry. So I'm not really sure how can we define a Rust language. So the main reason why we went for having a Rust encoder instead of a C, like when we have a C or C++ based encoder instead of Rust, is like that. One of the reason is the language that we all know. Like one reason which we find the Rust is very much helpful is that it can help the new people to contribute to a very complex domain. And secondly, one of the reasons, like the new contributors, in the sense there is a very vast user-friendly documentation available for the Rust language, while C or C++ it's there, but it's not quite modern and not very much community driven. That's one thing. Secondly, the reason why we opt for Rust is like the management of the whole project is really much easy. Like we have a definition, we can define what all packages we are going to have, what all dependencies are we going to have, and we can enable multiple architecture. And one of the great thing which I felt great about Rust is that if we build a target with a specific architecture, so we could have, like, for both Linux and Android also, we can have a single binary, we can generate a single binary. And for, like, we just need to define what are the targets we are going to have, and then done. So we just need to build it and we can get multiple targets in the fly. So like even in the case of our VLANs VLC, we have started having Rust inside the code. So right now the goal is that we will be having some parts of the, like, we can't migrate the whole code base to Rust. So we'll be having some dependencies and like some modules in Rust, slowly having the alternative version. For example, parsing the, I mean, what to say, Q sheet is there. So I can say the parsing some of the DVD information is now being done in Rust in VLC's latest nightlies. So that's part of our last year GSOC project in 2020. One person was there to integrate Rust. So we have, like, what we do is that we have a C wrapper over the Rust code, so which is quite easy in the Rust. So we just need to define how we are going to generate the header files, and we just need, like, it's only few lines of code for having another language full support for a Rust. So which is a great thing in Rust. So at the same time, if we try to do in a Python or C, it might not be the same case. Yeah, one more thing before I end up is that one thing which we found Rust quite amusing is how we can manage the memory and multi-threading. Both things are quite really fast and amazing in the case of Rust. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Yeah. So probably I think Vibhuti can also like talk about the Rust ecosystem and its meshing with the RISC-V open source kind of hardware ecosystem as well, right?
Yeah, to be fair, I haven't done anything related to RISC-V till now. My friends are doing, not me. So mostly I do with the stuff related to Art64. So
I think
the,
that was Swarnim
yeah.
then, was it? Was it Swarnim who was working with RISC-V?
Yeah, I started working with RISC-V, but my work was currently mostly with the emulator,
Yeah.
RISC-V emulators, because currently I do not have a Rust board at hand that I can play with
Oh,
regularly. Yeah, so I mean, like, yeah, I have ARM boards and MIPS boards, but yeah, no RISC boards. Yeah, hopefully
so
Beagle
the
5 will
reason why
solve
I
that situation. Yeah,
oh,
there's a new board called Beagle 5.
uh-huh.
It's going to be in RISC architecture. It'll probably solve that. So I do not have a lot of experience with RISC, but yeah, there is like RISC is one of the second tier, I believe, targets for Rust now. So it has been moved up. So it is available at least as a third tier. It's more than definitely there that you can get it working. Let me just make sure that it is.
And yeah,
Yeah, and
Art64
very
became
recent.
first architecture lately. Like it became in last month, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and also like M1 support is also very much in the pipeline, right?
Yes, like Art64 is the ARM architecture is quite the cutting edge thing for the next few years at least, till the RISC-V becomes more commonly available.
Yeah, so that's also something that's like building
Yeah,
up,
the
and the reason
thing
why
with
I
the
brought it up.
RISC-V is like it's more like a chicken and egg problem, where the content producers are waiting for the people to adapt RISC-V, and the RISC-V are waiting for content producers to take this thing.
Yeah, that's true.
It's mostly
uh,
a problem of inavailability of hardware. Like
Yeah,
RISC-V
I
hardware
agree.
is hard to come by. Like
yeah,
it's
that's
either
also
too
true.
expensive or it's not complete. It's completely unavailable.
Yeah, the Indian
That's also
government was
building up.
trying to have some competitions
Yeah,
related to RISC-V.
yeah. There's also Shakti processor in India that is
Yeah, my
being
friend
worked on.
worked
IIT
there.
Madras.
Yeah,
It is on RISC-V.
yes.
I think I know someone there, but I don't
Yeah, there's
remember what it
some
was.
startup called Encore in Chennai where my
Yeah.
few friends work there. So they do a lot of RISC-V stuff. Like they are getting huge funded from I mean SRO and DRDO.
IXRO.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are
So
having
that's
to
it.
have something
If I
related to
remember correctly,
science.
they're also using ISRO's fabs at the moment. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah, in Chandigarh or somewhere around that area, right? Yeah.
one
I do
thing
not
which I
Uh,
mean,
remember.
the Encore is in Chennai.
huh. All right.
So
So
most
the
of the
reason why I
stuff are
brought it
open
up,
source.
yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, the reason why I brought it up was because of how Rust is also taking place. A lot of developments in the embedded space, and yeah. So let's move on from that. We have Akshay with us, who's a hacker. Probably one of his exploits with Rust was, yeah, he shared about it today only with us. So that's how I know of it. It's a hacker kind of thing that I want him to talk about now. Yeah, Akshay, go ahead.
See, REST may, I think one of the things you've been trying to point out is the community, and for me, how that helped was the documentation around a lot of things. So, just last week, Hacker News, mein, there was a top link which was about learn REST in half an hour, which was like lots of examples of all kinds of features of REST in actual code. So you can learn REST very quickly because there's lots of documentation in large community. So a very good example of that is how I learned REST. Like maybe I'll talk about it later. But essentially, the REST book allows you to learn it very quickly, and the entire paradigm of memory management, which I mean the borrow checker, and you have to use immutable variables a lot. That makes you really think about how you program. And so, as a learner, and I learned different programming languages for fun. I find that a really powerful concept in REST that maybe other languages can also benefit from.
Yeah, I also have to say something about that. My experiences with Rust have all been related to the documentation thing because personally, I am not a fan of like knowing things by heart. I go into the documentations, find things, learn it, and then forget after I have implemented it. And so most of my projects have been like that in Rust. And yeah, one of my exploits is probably one of the greatest examples of how I have taken documentations from the Rust ecosystem. Like there's one on WASM bindgen, and yeah, that has been very helpful in writing my program. Yeah. Now moving on, I think it will be a good idea to like discuss the reasons why Rust is shaping up to be what it is right now, and that is the community. So yeah, any opinions on that from your side, Swarnim?
What were you saying? I didn't hear properly.
On the community side,
Yeah.
what you think is, yeah,
Yeah.
the
Rust.
foundation and all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Rust community's idea of having an open and clear discussions about features, while having the people, the key people in the design teams handle the final decisions, is something that I find quite nice, and I think probably better than having a closed drafting process of proposals. Here, RFCs can be discussed in forums, which has always been there with C and C++, but it has never quite felt as open with other languages as C and C++ because of the media, the form of media that they were using. I would say, at least for the modern systems, like most of the things about C and C++ are not well indexed on the internet. That is probably the main problem, and having platforms that are well indexed has actually made Rust a better place or better community for discussions. Like if you have something that you discuss on the forums or GitHub, then you will be able to find them if you do some searching, and it has led to being able to find answers to your problems even without actually knowing where to find them. Like in actual channels for the compilers, you do not have to search them manually. So this has led for much easier access to information, which has been much harder to acquire in other languages. Which is not to say that those languages don't have better resources. It's just that they are a lot more mature, so they definitely have better resources. But Rust, even with being lacking resources, like I can say that Rust has good documentations, but they are very limited. They have very limited scope. They are not as full as, say, C and C++. So they're not as rich. But having those conversations being well indexed on the internet and Google has helped a lot for the community to grow, and especially the fact that the community is extremely helpful towards each other has made made a lot of progress towards fostering better people and helping the newer people from different communities come and learn. Like you do not have to have a background in maths, type systems, or low level programming. You just need enough knowledge to get started with Rust. Like you just need to read the book. If you do not find something, you can go to one of the communities of Rust, and almost always you will find someone there to help you out with, rather than getting the book thrown at you and someone shouting RTFM. So that has been a better experience for someone who is learning Rust from the perspective of not knowing anything. Means, at least from what I've seen happen with people.
Yeah, one more thing I can add toward that is that in the C or C++, we had to do a lot of things for generating the documentation with the help of the oxygen.
Yeah, the oxygen was a pain there.
So at the same time, in the Rust case, so it's quite more straightforward to do the documentation and a nice HTML page. I'm not sure, like so it's a markdown thing. I mean, docs.rs would be generated if we do the command. So like it will be a lot more easier for the people to read the package instructions and what are the things. So that did help quite a lot of newbies in our community, in our projects, to get started, bootstrap the program. So we don't need to give each and every instructions for the people how to use the public API. So that was a good thing which Trust did solve for us.
I think you are meaning to say about cargo doc.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think the entire tooling of Rust has helped a lot for the community to grow. Rust doc, cargo, and now Rust analyzer, RSLs, language servers, and everything has
and I
helped.
think that is a
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that was a contribution of like NPM people, like they became a part of the Rust community.
Steve was there, I believe. And there were a lot of people involved in. Yeah, a lot of people came from the web side, from Ruby and JavaScript, and they actually made it a much nicer place. Like now cargo and having crates. Crates are like packages in JavaScript node, and it's much better than having to actually write all the code for linking to different libraries in, say, CMake and stuff. So it has been much better of an user experience. The language has a much better user experience, in short. So it is much easier for someone to get into rather than C and C++.
True. Anything to share about this from your side, Akshay? About the documentation, other than what you talked about?
Yeah, I was just going to type in the IRC channel. Stack Overflow survey every time keeps saying REST is the most loud programming language by people who work with REST. So essentially, people who let me see what's the least loud. VBA, Objective C, people who work in these JavaScript. Yeah, but essentially, once you start using it, you will love it. That's the thing about REST, and I think documentation and all the tools and all of that has a great role to play in that.
Yeah, I can comment something about Objective-C because I did quite some time with Objective-C for macOS VLC. So, like, if we see closely, the Mac Objective-C code base has a quite immense readme thing, stuff like that. Like, it has good resources for learning in the Xcode itself if you do. So, the thing which I felt the most complicated, so the comparing Objective-C with the Rust is like it's way different. The complications of having a class and an object and a function in Objective-C is like you need to do with multiple files and multiple classes and multiple, like it's a lot more strict typed and we need to follow a lot of cases, and after doing everything we'll be knowing that it's an error. So after doing like spending like hour and two and then understanding a function and a class, then writing them, it would result like 1.5 hours for a simple trivial thing for a beginner, I mean. And after that, at the same time, for a Rust, it would take hardly 10 to 15 minutes at the same time. So the complications, like it's straightforward. It's like if it's writing a C program, but in an easier and safe way in Rust. So at the same time, Objective C, it sounds like C only, but it's way too complicated.
Yeah, I have worked with some of the Objective C libraries in just cross platform applications during some of the times in game development, and it has been a lot more cumbersome to work with it. Like it has extremely different mindset, but it is C, so it feels like it should come naturally, but it somehow has a feeling. It has a feeling of familiarity while having completely different semantics, which makes it extremely hard for someone uh, it makes it extremely easy to make a mistake and extremely hard to use it properly when you're using it for the first time. Maybe after years of experience it might get better, but not quite sure about that.
Yeah, after 1 year also, it was bit better, but not so great.
Right.
Yeah, that's the reason
So
why the macOS things are not so friendly with the people. Like there are only few people who are doing macOS development because
Yeah,
the
no,
language sucks.
the main problem with Objective C, and yeah, Swift is a good language though.
Yeah,
But the main problem with Objective C is that it is a language that almost nobody uses every day. It is a language that you only use when you're porting something to Mac OS. Like if you have a project and you're generally not writing it in Objective C and you're not using Objective C in your daily work. And that is probably the main reason why people dislike it, because as a language it probably has some okay and decent features. They are arguably worse languages, but it has the problem that most of the people who are using it use it for very specific niche case of porting things to macOS, while Swift feels a lot like somehow it is like Python but better types and everything. uh,
yeah,
like Swift is just a very nice language to work in compared to Objective-C.
yeah.
That's
In the case of VLC, like the code base is written in the VLC's macOS is written in Objective C, and it's like nearly impossible, and it takes lots of manpower to convert to Swift or any modern language because the code base is quite huge that, and there are only volunteers to do that. So we are out of options. Only way is to suffer with the Objective C.
okay, so it's, I think it'll be better to not bash another language. Yeah. So I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Against the
as
rest
much
spirit.
as yeah. So moving forward,
So
I
what's
think
the next
we
thing?
have to discuss. Huh?
I mean, I was asking what's the next thing in our agenda of the meeting.
Yeah. We have to talk about how Rust can contribute to Debian. So I think one thing that we should discuss before we go any forward is Linux, and how like Rust is going to start becoming a part of the Linux code base. Hopefully. Yeah. So what are your takes on that?
Yeah, I was at the beginning a few years ago looking at the kernel module development in Rust, or the complete scene of the kernel module development in Rust, because I didn't want to do anything in C and C++ because, yeah, I was just not sure how many mistakes will I make. So overall, I was going for much of a safe approach and trying to find if I can use Rust for that. In the process, I have understood that there are people pushing for it and there is work happening in it. And even the maintainers have agreed to having Rust part of, say, in Linux. But the main problem currently is with the fact that Rust C only supports LLVM, which basically makes a pretty big hole in security if you are compiling kernel with GCC and Rust with LLVM. Though the kernel is now compatible with or Clang, I suppose. So
Yeah, we can
it
do
is
that.
possible to do it, but there's an ongoing effort that, like, it has started picking up steam late last year, like in late 2020.
GCC.
I do
GCC
not want
support.
to take the name of 2020 ever again, though. So, yeah, let's forget that it ever existed. Everything started in 2021.
Yeah.
So, uh,
Yeah.
so
So that's coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, in
GCC
the
is
Rust, we can change the compiler quite efficiently, like not so complicated to change the compiler and build the program. I tried to do with various compilers, so it's fine, I think. But yeah, we need to explicitly mention.
at the moment, yeah, if I had to say that Rust is probably not mature enough to be part of Linux at this very exact moment. Hopefully things will be extremely different after 6 months or 1 year, when people have actual working code inside of the Linux kernel, at least the mainline kernel. That is what I'm trying to say. Like, probably not within a year, but soon.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure
so
what timeline is going to be there.
so in the case of VLC, I can explain the very quick way how we are handling the Rust program inside the VLC media player. So what we do is that we write the Rust code, and after that what we have is that we generate the C headers for that, and with the help of C headers we will be calling the C Rust, like the Rust will be generated and the C headers will be made, and based on the C header we are just having that in the C code. So we, in short, we are having the Rust code as such, but it will be converted to C using the C binder, and then we are having the API calls back for the, and like it will be using the Rust things for having the operations while it will be done in the C environment, right?
yeah.
So that's how we
Yeah.
did.
So yeah. One of my experiences with Rust probably would be with the CABI, that is the application binary interfaces. Yeah, so I was working with this organization known as TIKV, and yeah, I have to say that a lot of it is still in the works, and
Yeah,
even
I
if you are
agree.
writing like CPP libraries, that's this C plus, I forget the name, I think it's C plus plus RS, yeah, something like that. So that is also coming up. Hopefully, it will help a lot. What's your take on that, Swarnim?
I couldn't hear it properly. What were you trying to say?
The C++ ABI kind of thing, like
Uh,
interfacing C++
yeah,
code and
yeah.
Rust.
The Rust and C++ intercompatibility is, the scene is fine. I mean, I would like to say it's quite decent when you're using Clang, and that's the only thing that I have experience with. I've never tried to have a cross compiling something like with GCC and all, everything different in the mix, but it is quite well optimized. Like, you can have LTO across the source code, like Rust code can have LTO across the binaries, even with when you're using the across the binary, even when you're using C++, and C++ can have LTO and other optimizations even when you're using Rust code within it. And I do not have a lot of experience with using both of them together in a format where they are both directly or statically linked. So you guys might have more experience for that. I've mostly done it with dynamic linking because Rust has extremely good CFFI, which has allowed us, even in Godot, we have a GD native layer, which works quite well with the current. We have a Rust bindings for it, which allows us to dynamic link Rust code, and which we can use to write the entire games in Rust language rather than C sharp or GD script, which is the usual for a Godot. So it is also occasionally maintained, so anyone can try that. There are a lot of videos about it as well. So
Yeah, so I think the Rust ecosystem, it's mostly about like the acceptance of the concept of an FFI. That's the foreign function. I forget the name. It's foreign function interface. Yeah. So that's something that's growing, and I think it's going to be a lot helpful when you're like PyOxide is there with interfaces with the Python interfaces. That's also like C++ interfaces, C, FFI. Yeah, so that's something that's growing, and it's going to be a lot helpful. And I think one of the main reasons why these have like caught on is because of the documentation. So otherwise, it won't. It would have been a hell lot of work to work with an FFI. I think, from my experience. Yeah. Moving on, I think we have to discuss about Debian and Debian as a whole and the Rust packaging. So, any experiences to share in that space? Because I have not packaged Debian package myself till date. So that's something that's there.
Only
Yeah,
package I
your
tried
thoughts.
would be like I tried once to have a Ravi into Debian. So what happened is that when I realized that Debian packaging has quite a lot of rules, like we need to have the license headers for almost all files and the license declaration inside the also to mention for the submodules also we need to make sure there's license headers and things like that. So at some we had something like some modules within the Rust project itself which was having that, but it was maintained by someone else, so we had to have a fork of it and make our own version to make sure it fails. I mean, it falls to the compatibility suit and it passes. So it was quite pain to make sure that all was having the headers intact.
Yeah, that's one big pain that we have to like work on.
Yeah,
Probably
I
something
haven't
that.
done much with the Debian packaging as such. I was just verifying a review. I was reviewing the code. That's it. Maybe
Oh, okay.
Akshay would be having a lot more experience, I believe.
Yeah. Akshay, anything
To
to
be
share?
honest, I am newer to Debian than I am to REST. So I just looked at the Debian wiki for REST packaging, and there seems to be a team who are doing it already, very well coordinated, and they seems to have a easy way to do all crates in a single Git repo.
All
So
right. Okay.
it's probably
So
going to be much more easier than JavaScript and other languages where Go, for example, where it is very complicated, different tool chains and all of that.
okay.
So I'll just put that link in the chat, maybe.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's
My case
WebCargo or
was it
something.
was around like 2 years back. My story.
Oh, yeah. That's,
So
yeah, most of our experiences are from the past. So that's it.
yeah, so I think it will be a lot more matured and grown enough at the moment.
Yeah. And 2020 helped a lot, even though Swarnim says it was bad. Yeah, that's there. More people were having a lot more free time, probably, in some days, in the start. Yeah.
And
So
yeah, like
now moving
due to
on.
2020, the whole like research wing of the Mozilla got laid off and the project
Oh, that's
stopped
true.
funding.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
we lost all of our 8 full-time employees who was doing the Ravi development got lost their jobs and they are still hunting for some
Yeah.
jobs.
That's true. That's true. That's something bad that happened. But I think like the Rust ecosystem as a whole moved away from being
yeah,
Mozilla dependent.
so yeah. Rust is now looking to establish a Rust Foundation,
Yeah,
a
I
proper
read.
Rust Foundation for managing. Like, yeah, it did have a short term impact, I would say, but in long term it is better, and probably nothing will happen to Rust in the long term, because now even companies like Microsoft and Facebook and Google are involved with Rust. So like there's no like it's not going away.
Yeah, that's true. It's not going away, and it's probably going to get stronger. But at the same time, you have to make sure that it's not going to become another of those corporate languages like C, C++ or something like
Yeah,
that.
no, but all the languages are corporate languages. There is no way for a language to survive without corporate support. Like developing a language is not cheap.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
That's true.
it's not like all can say like donate $10 and say this language is going to become the next $1 billion language.
Yeah, that is something that's happening right now, I think, with nim and all those
Yeah.
other derivative languages that are popping up nowadays.
There's
Yeah,
a nim and Zig as well. Those
yeah,
are fun languages to work with. Nim is
yeah,
more along the side of like it is like more towards uh, transpilation to C and C++ and has sort of some runtime for scheduling and garbage collection. And while Zig is completely like C and C++ like Rust and lacks any kind of runtime.
yeah. So that's that. I think we have very little time left. So what we'll do now is we'll go into some project, let's mention our projects as a whole. So would you like to start with it, Akshay? Would you like to start with your introduction of your project, a short
Okay,
introduction?
I don't have a active project as such. I wanted to learn Rust, and at the same time, Mozilla kicked my extension out of their add-ons website. So I learned Rest as well as built a project in Rest. And looking back at it, it was okay, reasonable. I had unit testing, and there were no bugs. I mean, no big bugs as such. And then I used a lot of good libraries and all of that. So the process of how I went through learning and what all revelations I had while fighting with the borrow checker, that I have documented in a blog post, which I'll share in the channel. I think people who are using Rush now can talk about their projects.
Yeah. So my experience was a lot more recent, probably. I worked on a WASM application. It's QRS. So it's also on my website. I'll just put it down there. Anyways, so it was how I learned what WASM as a whole is, and yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done with WASM. Probably one thing that I have to say about the WASM Rust ecosystem is that it still does not support many of the promised features that WASI is supposed to feature. So that's something that should be working on. But otherwise, yeah, I'll just post my experiences also in a blog post. Probably that will be faster for all of us to understand. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Moving
thing,
on.
yeah, about the Wasm, one thing I need to add is that it breaks a lot. It breaks the CA and it breaks the build system a lot. That's the one pain thing about the Wasm. So we had the JS API, and today, like the 20 minutes ago, we just bought it out of the tree due to the breakage of the CI and these things. I just completed. So it's the main thing with the Wasm API is that it breaks a lot of the CI and all those stuff. So it's quite painful to maintain a Wasm thing within a production thing. So that's one thing which is the main issue with the Wasm. I personally felt it requires some time to make it more mature for usage.
Yeah, so yeah, WASM is currently most of the RFCs are currently work in progress, and most of them are only implemented for the desktop and the system level libraries of WASM, like the WASMer and stuff, rather than having an implementation in the browsers. The browser implementations are much more stable.
Yeah, that's true. So that's that. I'll share it in the links. And yeah, what about your projects? Probably we'll start with Swarna.
I think we have
So
only like 40 seconds more.
yeah, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fast,
so
fast, I think.
I do not have a serious project in Rust, personal project, but we have in Gorat we have Rust bindings that we maintain, and if you like to check them out, help with maintenance, you can go there. And there are a couple of game engines in Rust, Amethyst and Bevy, that I tend to follow. They are also cool. And there's a Ruffle project, which is about a Flash emulator for web, which allows emulation of Flash in Rust via WASM. So that's cool as well. So go ahead and check those things out, and hope everybody has a good day.
Yeah. I think 2-3 minutes extra we'll take up anyway. So yeah, mind freeze.
What to say? Like I
Vibhuti.
mentioned, I was bashing about the awesome. So apart from that, what to say? Do star our projects. We just need some more stars.
That's true. The ecosystem requires a lot more love.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's getting a lot more love compared to other projects at least.
Yeah, that's true.
And like,
There's a
yeah,
lot more interest that's growing
yes.
up in the Rust community as
Yeah,
well.
the only thing is that interest won't be long lived. That's the only thing. It will be short lived.
That's
Like
that's
once
right.
they start, the rest is fine. They will start contributing. Then realize it's quite complicated. I mean, like you yourself try to contribute some parts, and you and stopped it, right? So it's a complicated
Yeah,
story.
it gets complicated as a whole. Yeah, I think with that, before we end the discussion, end the BOF panel here, I think we need to like mention something that's coming up. So next week, we not us, Sanchayan and some people from Bangalore Rust are organizing a meetup. So hopefully, we'll meet up again during that. Yeah, so it's up on meetup.org, I think. Yeah, I don't know, I'll probably share the link in the etherpad later on. Yeah, so with that, any other closing statements, guys?
Yeah, thanks for the MiniDebConf team for having this session. Apart from that, I would like to also thank the other people who organized the event. And it was, I'm not sure who all are watching it live. So I'm not sure how, apart from that, it was a nice event. And I hope this might go online in YouTube or some other places. Not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll
What
be
about
recorded and shared.
Yeah, all right. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.